The headline reads, 12 Republicans support a resolution in a 59-41 vote. They block President Donald Trump's national emergency declaration at the southern border. Well, one of those 12, I was expecting to see the name Tillis, but the name is not there. And I've been getting texts from Washington, D.C., as well as across the state about this topic. And so I'm looking forward to getting Marc Rotterman's observations on this. Of course, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, and we've talked about this in weeks past. I know we've had callers call in complaining about the announcement from Senator Tillis's office that he was not going to support the president on this. Yet today, and I saw a note, all sorts of notes, Mark, about
well, he flipped his position. Great to be with you.
Great, thank you.
Let me just say, okay, he wrote an op-ed saying it was unconstitutional in the Washington Post of all places. And I think he got so much blowback from the base, which, by the way, the party in North Carolina, the GOP, the Republican Party, is the Trump party. No question about it. 84 to 90% at any given time support Donald J. Trump. I think that he decided to change his mind out of political expediency, but the problem is when you flip like that,
it's more noticeable.
People notice it, and so do you have your courage over your convictions or don't you?
Right.
And I think it was political expediency. And there is a lot of talk. I don't know if you saw the Hill article about possibly Congressman Mark Walker running against primary and maybe Mark Meadows, which I don't think will happen. I've also heard through the grapevine of several others that are considering, particularly one major funder, one major conservative who is thinking of getting in, and we may hear it early next week. So stay tuned for that. But I think what Tom Tillis, he's a nice man. What he's done is he's run a general election strategy. He has kind of tried to placate the swamp, but he's forgot about his right flank.
Well, now let's talk about this in relationship also to the visual. And the visual here is that one by one, the Republican never-Trumpers, or shall we call them the Republican tepid Trumpers, have been falling in line. Is this an indication to you, Mark, that what we're seeing, and by the way, let me just remind everyone, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, is with us this afternoon. Is what we're seeing, Mark, an indication that, quite frankly, the party is beginning to line up with the president? It's happening in fits and starts. No,
I think the party is lined up. I think that some of the people up in the swamp are not lined up with the president. But you know, when you have Mitt Romney coming out there, well, it's just not constant. Well, look, let's be real clear. In 1976, the Congress gave the president the authority to call a national emergency. End of story. Most legal scholars, including Jonathan Turley, who's a liberal scholar, all right, from Georgetown, says the president has the authority. He will win this. Meanwhile, he'll be building the wall. But what you have here now is a bunch of people in Washington, including Ben Sass and Lamar Alexander and them, and they're just more concerned about what the Washington Post and the people in the Georgetown salons think. That's what they've really forgot where they've come from. And when you have 76,000 people coming across the border a month now, catch and release is at an all-time high because they can't stop them, and they have to release them. So 76,000 a month, is that not a national security problem?
Well, not only that, that is right now. What will it be like in another 3 months? Could it be even more?
What happens if Venezuela there's a mass exodus? Right. They can't even keep the lights on there.
Right. So,
truthfully.
I fully agree and understand what you're saying. The thing I'm wondering, Mark, and again, Marc Rotterman with us, is this an indication, come the 2020 election, that there's enough momentum within the Tea Party and the various groups and organizations to reshape the Republican Party. I want to get to another issue about this as well, but is this...
Well, I think that has become the Trump Party.
Okay.
Now, the K Street lobbyists, the Mitch McConnells, and frankly, when Paul Ryan was there, who's out bad-mouthing the president now that he's out, who, by the way, promised $25 billion for the fence after the omnibus bill, never kept his promise, went out and worked against him. I think Trump has gotten wise to the way that Washington works, and that a lot of these folks you just can't trust them when they shake your hand. But the 9 yards of it is the base, and I think the middle class in the Midwest are with the president right now. And let me tell you, they're not going to beat him with Beto O'Rourke. And by the way, I think which is very, very, guy's getting his teeth clean. He sends that out on Instagram. Thinks that's cool.
Uh-huh.
But here's the 9 yards of it. Is what we need to think about. Has the Democratic Party moved so far to the left that a guy like Joe Biden, who's a centrist liberal,
mm-hmm.
can win the party's nomination? Well, and I would argue he can't.
Okay, well, there are others that disagree with you on, but we're going to get to this in a moment, Mark. The other question, and this is the one that, taking a cue from Ann Coulter, who has accused the president of not being honest with the voters, or for that matter, being a con artist. The president,
but other than that, she's all for him.
Right. Now, my question to you is, you have yourself expressed concern that if he didn't build the wall, one of his three primary campaign promises, you were concerned on his behalf. The fact that he's doing it this way, does it sort of strengthen the image? Yes, it
strengthens it. And by the way, he can continue to build strategic fencing where the Border Patrol says it's necessary. And you continue to hear from the liberals and some Republicans. Well, most of the drugs and most of the problems come in at the port of entry. Well, how do you know that when the border is unsecured? Do you think the cartels call them up and say, well, we're definitely coming through the port of entry today. Yeah. We're not going to come through the unprotected places.
Quite frankly, is I'll say it's immaterial. A leak in the boat, whether it's in the bow, amidships, or stern, is not material. It's a leak in the boat. So you plug the leak. It doesn't matter.
I mean, you have all these drugs coming in. You have fentanyl. You have people dying. And I'm not an alarmist. 70,000 people overdosed last year.
And as a matter of fact,
you continue to have people murdered, like the woman 49 years old by an illegal immigrant gangbanger had been deported 5 times in California.
Uh-huh.
Just last week.
Yesterday, we were chatting with Vince Colonnese of the Daily Caller, and he pointed out, he said, more lives lost to opioids and illegal drugs than lost in the Vietnam War, and that in 1 year. That's just in 1 year.
Right. So, but they don't see a national emergency.
Right.
And I tell you something. The guy who never wavered on this, never wavered, was Senator Richard Burr. He never wavered. He supported the president on this. Lamar Alexander didn't. Susan Collins didn't.
Well, we kind of expected that.
Murkowski of Alaska didn't. And so we know who these good government folks are. But I will tell you that I think in North Carolina, there's change coming because the status quo no longer works.
That's what I wanted to hear.
I don't know if you saw the speaker today put a bill together, Speaker Moore. In regards to ICE. And detentions, and these sheriffs who are essentially making their counties sanctuary cities. And it's going to require them to alert ICE. It's going to be a really tough battle. I bet. My guess is it goes through the Senate, and then which is controlled by the Republicans up here, and then Cooper vetoes it, which I think is problematic for him in an election year.
Our guest, of course, Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row. And by the way, you can watch him as well as listen to him as you're hearing him today, 8:30 tomorrow evening on WUNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel. I want to stick with this issue of Thom Tillis before we go to the break, Mark. I'm looking at a release just a few minutes ago from the North Carolina Democrat Party, and this is I think this is puts the senator really in I don't want to say a rock and a hard place, just in a bad place. Statement on, this is the headline, NCDP statement on Tillis caving on Trump emergency declaration. Raleigh, North Carolina Democrat Party spokesperson Robert Howard released the following statement after Senator Thom Tillis announced his opposition to a resolution to terminate President Trump's emergency declaration. Quote, Senator Tillis made a big show about how he'd stand up for North Carolina, but caved under pressure. I'm going to go so far and say, quite frankly, he did stand up for North Carolina because I think North Carolina let him know what the state felt.
Well, he stood up for political expediency.
Okay.
He really didn't stand up. If you look at the bills he's running on immigration, pure and simple, they're amnesty. So and by the way, he said, quote, unquote, the wall never made sense. So let's be real clear on that. This isn't Johnny-come-lately on one issue of immigration. And I think that the base will see that for what it was. It really wasn't because he believed it and he had talks with the president, with the White House, not really with the president. It's because he was inundated with phone calls.
Okay, we're going to get back to this and more in just a moment. I want to talk about the association with the presidential campaigns now that Beto O'Rourke has entered. I want to get Marc Rotterman's predictions about former Vice President Joe Biden. What does he think about the possibility of him entering the race as well? Stay tuned for more here on Viewpoints with Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, as seen on UNC-TV's main channel tomorrow evening, 8:30 p.m., 9 o'clock on the digital channel, Saturday, 4 p.m., Sunday at 9:30 a.m., all on the digital channel, then again noon on Sunday on UNC-TV's main channel. That's Front Row with Marc Rotterman. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. If you'd like to call in and make comment about what we're talking about with Marc Rotterman, feel free to do so. 252 area code 247-7282. That's 247-7282. The airwaves have been full of remarks all day nationally about the reaction to the Senate's decision on supporting or not supporting the president. 12 Republicans have decided not to support the president's efforts to build a wall. Of course, as we heard just a few moments ago from Marc Rotterman, and we're seeing in other stories, Mark, that the president has already announced he's going to veto it, start building the wall. But he's going to have to fight this out in courts, is he not?
He is, but I think my understanding is he can still be building the barriers by the time until there's a ruling in court. And again, this has been done 58 times. Right. This just shows you the dysfunction of Washington. By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but there's two, and it's been run by the two congressmen. A bill was introduced to categorize the cartels in Mexico as terrorist organizations, and why not? And the other thing is like MS-13 in their own home country of El Salvador has been categorized,
right,
as a terrorist organization. We should do that here. These people are flooding our country with drugs. They're terrorists, pure and simple.
If we could attach to them the responsibility of working as Russian internet interlopers, we probably could deal with that. But
right, and we could spend $50 million doing an investigation that comes to nothing.
If it's not Russian, exactly. All right, let's go to Gary in Oriental very quickly. Gary, good afternoon. Marc Rotterman with us. Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark. I heard the news about Thom Tillis finally flipping and coming to his senses.
Well, and, wait. Do you think?
I'll be honest with you. I know
is he
a lot
coming
of people
to his
that
senses, Gary, or is it political expediency?
I think it's probably more of a political speech, Mark. But I will tell you this: he got a lot of pressure from us out there. I know for one, I was one of the people calling, and I've got a lot of people that I know that were calling up there raising holy ruckus about this one.
Cool.
Well, it's not only that; it's the bill he's running, Gary, on amnesty. It's his saying that the wall doesn't make sense.
Right.
Okay?
So you're saying there's a political ploy?
Pardon me?
Do you think it's a
You're saying
political?
it's pretty much a political ploy?
Oh, sure. He's in big trouble. I expect that he's going to get a major challenger.
Wow.
And I think you'll know that.
I
think you'll know that in the next 10 days.
Okay.
Listen, there's an article in the Hill magazine that what's the guy's name? The Congressman Mark
Andrews. No,
pardon me.
Mark Andrews or Anderson?
No, the guy from the congressman from Greensboro, Mark Walker.
Okay, Mark Walker.
He's considering it.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Where does he stand?
Oh.
Well, he's completely secured the borders, and he's a big evangelical Congressman Trump supporter. Period. He's a Tea Party guy.
But Gary, before I move on, because I want to talk about presidential candidates as well, your conversations with all the folks that you've been talking to, are they adamantly opposed to this Republican initiative to stop the president?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Everybody is so angry about this. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
They're so mad because it is such a crisis.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you a good example. I live in Oriental, North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
Little tiny town, and we live outside of town. And my girl was walking down the street the other morning, and I'm not exaggerating, found 2 used syringes and a used condom out here in the country. Now, we're being affected out here, too, and everybody is seeing the same thing with the drug addiction and the heroin and everything coming over this border, and it has got to stop now, and people are absolutely livid at the Republicans.
That is a sad commentary. Oriental is such a beautiful place.
All right.
I know, but, Mark, it's everywhere. I mean, it could be, little town, Lizard Lick, wherever, population 200. It's everywhere, and it's got to stop, and this is why people are so angry.
All right, Gary, thanks very much. I want to move on real quickly, but I appreciate that call on that one. All right, Mark, before I move on, because I do want to get to the presidential races, and we've also got to find out what's on tap tomorrow evening there on Front Row. What about the impact this is going to have within the Republican Party? That was the reason I asked that question of Gary. Could this weaken the Republican Party in the upcoming elections? Is there enough momentum? Is there enough energy within the Republican Party?
I think there's enough energy because I think Trump is a force of nature. He'll drive the energy.
Okay, let's talk about...
I do not see anybody in the Democratic Party at this stage who can win. Now, look, think about this. Think about this. Just think about this. They've got, 18, 19 people are going to be involved in a primary?
Wait a second, Mark. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, 2 things. One, we're looking at another force of nature, and that, of course, is the freshman members of Congress, and a growing focus on a social and socialist agenda. And now the Speaker of the House is promoting 16-year-olds voting. Mark.
That is true. Listen, this is a clash. They always say that this is the most important election. This is a clash of whether you want to go down the road to socialism, open borders, and 16-year-olds voting. Now, I personally don't think they can't drink, they can't serve in the military, they shouldn't be able to vote. It's dead on arrival in the Senate. But what I'm saying to you, and what I was trying to articulate, if you just give me a second here, if you have all these people in a Democrat primary, Bernie Sanders got a huge following.
Right.
He doesn't need to get a majority. He needs to just get 30%. He might be winning these primaries.
Right. So that leads me to the next question. Let's talk about the candidates. And we are waiting patiently for Bernie to, we hear that he is going to make an announcement. Beto O'Rourke made the announcement today. My question to you is, will this mobilize the younger voters?
You mean in the
I think election.
There's a new Harvard-Harris poll out. And what socialism means to me and you, millennials don't have the stigma attached to socialism.
Right.
They like it. They want green. They like the Green New Deal. Mm-hmm. They want climate change, what they perceive to be a problem to be fixed. And by the way, they're for a lot of these programs that free college education, free Medicare for all.
Right.
What they're not considering
is who's going to pay for it.
Who can pay for it?
Okay, let's talk about this in relationship to the major supporters of the swamp in Washington, D.C. K Street, all the major players, the big corporations, and let's bring into this the National Chamber of Commerce that have been highly pillared for their support of open borders and things of this nature. Where are they going to play? How are they going to play a role in this? If on one side you have an arch socialist, and on the other side you've got, well, Donald Trump. I don't know how you would describe him.
Well, I'd call him a free market capitalist.
Okay.
I don't think that they can win that argument. I think the economy is going well. Let me say, and I saw a report today in the White House Council of Economic Advisors is not actually putting this out, but it's being talked up, and folks are picking up on it outside of the White House, from inside the White House, that the stock market could go up 2,000 points if there's a deal
in
China, which benefits everybody, even if you're not in the market.
No question.
Because when you have free trade and you're getting more goods cheaper and the tariffs are off, people are going to profit. People are going to have more expendable money. I would say to you this. There is a group of people on K Street that would as soon run Mitt Romney or John Kasich and cause Donald Trump to lose and hand the party over to the socialists and the Democrats. Conversely, the problem for the Democrats is AOC Ocasio-Cortez going to drive the policy initiatives of the Democratic Party, and is Middle America going to buy into that? I think that's
the big question. All right.
That's a big question.
Stay with us. We're going to continue this with Marc Rotterman in Front Row. We're going to wrap it up with him in just a few moments to find out what's on tap tomorrow evening, 8:30 on WUNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, and then other times during the weekend, which I will share with you shortly. Stay with us. We'll find out what's on tap for the end of the week here on Viewpoints. And yes, it is coming up next. And Nicole will be here in the studio. I just saw her walk across in front of me. All right, you're listening to Viewpoints here on the Talk Station FM 107 AM 1240. Mark, before we get to state politics, well, we are going to get into state politics. The events in Washington, D.C. today related to, if you will, the winnowing of Republicans, those for, those against. What impact will this have on the two congressional races in North Carolina, the 3rd and the 9th? Will this energize the Republicans? Because, very quickly, and I'm sorry it's such a long question, the first election, well, the first primary for the 3rd is April 30th. People are really excited about going to the polls on April 30th. And if there is a runoff election, which there's every indication it will be, that election will be happening July 4th. So will the events in Washington, D.C. motivate, if you will, the grassroots in both those districts?
I think that the Republican Party is going to come out in larger turnout than what could be expected in an off-year a special election because of the immigration issue and because of Donald J. Trump. And I'd also tell you in the Republican Party that a lot of these folks who are running are going to try to tie themselves to President Trump and to the national emergency and the border crisis. And those who try to play it both ways won't do well.
All right. I'm pretty comfortable with the situation here in the 3rd Congressional District, predominantly Republican, although we've said before, you yourself have noted, this is a wide open race and a Democrat could take it. But let's look at,
I think Alan Thomas has a base. But the other thing I think we should watch is perhaps Scott Thomas will try to run for the Senate.
Ooh.
And I mean the U.S. Senate.
Wow. Okay. Let's talk about this in relationship to the 9th Congressional District, which is, because of a large urban market, predominantly liberal Democrat. But let's be fair. There were a lot of Republicans that turned out in that race, even though, yes, there's some questions about ballot harvesting, but that ballot harvesting was not that intense.
Well, Senator Dan Bishop got in today, Republican, and he'll do well. Look, Alec McMillan's one in that Republican. Jim Martin's one in that district. Going back to Charlie Jonas, one before him. Sue Myrick and Robert Pittenger. Okay, so now the district has changed some. But I would say to you that I think McCready has a leg up just because of the taint of the ballot scandal.
But at the same time, to our conversation earlier, the president, it's interesting how he's maintained the energy level of his administration. I have never seen a presidential administration. And granted, as you've said on several occasions, we're running out of time, but I've got to make note of this. You've said, you've asked many times, how does he get up in the morning and go about business with all the sling and arrows that he feels on it?
Well, I mean, they routinely, now they're attacking his wife because when she went down to Alabama, that wasn't his wife.
Oh, okay.
You know, the view is on her saying she's too short.
Oh,
that was a lookalike. She didn't want to go on the trip. I mean, how absurd are these people on the left?
Wait. Not only that, the thing that fascinates me, though, is the level of energy that's coming out of the White House. Correct me if I'm wrong. There usually is sort of just a quiet period. There has been no quiet period, and it strikes me, Mark, that this is going to be a great, if you will, membership drive for conservative Republicans or the conservative movement. And by the way, it's going to draw people, I would argue, from the Democrat side of the aisle, those that are not comfortable with the growing socialist approach in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's right. Middle America won't buy. But let me just say this. Millennials will, for the first time, be the overwhelming proportion of the vote. 37%. I still don't think they're going to turn out in the numbers that's projected by the Democratic Party.
Wow. I'm looking forward to that conversation this evening. We're going to be chatting with a panel of millennials here in the next hour, Mark. All right, Mark, let's talk about what's on tap on tomorrow evening's program of Front Row, as seen on WUNC-TV's main channel, 8:30 p.m., 9 o'clock on the digital channel. You get to watch Mark as well as hear him. And by the way, like your goatee, Mark. And then the other one.
I think I look a lot smarter.
Yeah, well, you look great. And then who's going to?
Well, here's what we're going to talk about: the president's newly minted budget, the latest, what's going on in the General Assembly. A lot of things happened this week. Pelosi closed the door on immigration. On impeachment, and then she reopened the door on impeachment of the president today. And we'll be talking about a new Harvard-Harris poll on millennials. Joining us will be Mitch Kokon of the John Locke Foundation, Donna King with WPTF Radio News, Donald Bryson with Civitas Institute, and political analyst Joe Stewart. So it should be a good show.
Now, quick question, since you brought up the topic of the millennials, and I'm wondering, what role will they play both on this issue of immigration but also the economy?
Well, I think that a lot of them have bought into the fact, particularly on the economy, that they should get free health care, that they should get free education. And so I think that's a real dilemma. But I will say that on immigration, I think a lot of them point towards amnesty. I really do believe that. I think but what you have to I think one of the things, don't call people, I don't think they should call people xenophobics. Listen, automation is happening. All right? If you're an unskilled worker, whether you're an American worker or you're illegal, whoever, a lot of those jobs are going to be taken by automation. So what are we going to do with these people? Are they all going to be on government assistance? I don't think that works for America.
Marc Rotterman, host of Front Row, tomorrow evening, 8:30 on WUNC-TV's main channel, 9 o'clock on the digital channel, 4 p.m. Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Sunday, all on the WUNC digital channel, and then noon on Sunday, WUNC-TV's main channel. That's Front Row with our guest, your host, tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening and Saturday and Sunday on WUNC-TV. Mark, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Always fun.